It's the multi-billion-pound industry that's in ever-growing demand. But it's not just those chasing the picture-perfect look who are taking advantage of it.
Since lockdown, there has just been a complete explosion of people just being trained in a one-day course, even a two-day course, and claiming to be as qualified as medical professionals.
They're just going in completely clueless of what could happen, and I think that's dangerous.
Marie Snap is no stranger to cosmetic injectables. Before her son was born, she'd had Botox a few times, so booking in for a top-up after she gave birth wasn't unusual.
This girl that I went to had amazing feedback, like everybody was all posting pictures and talking about how good it was, and her work did look good and she looked very professional. She had like her little nurse's uniform on.
Marie arranged to get Botox and lip filler, but she says alarm bells started to sound during the appointment.
Usually you have to fill out a form to say, you know, check for allergies and sign, and there was nothing, which I thought was strange. But then again, I kept thinking maybe it's because I spoke to her and she knows that I'm quite aware of Botox. But I should have listened to my gut.
Marie left the salon feeling anxious, but fine, until a few hours later.
One of my eyebrows was really high and one was really low. It was just when I raised my eyebrows, I looked like a clown on one side. And then she was fine. She's like, oh, come up and I'll fix it. So again, I was like, well, that, you know, there was no qualms about fixing it. And I went back up and I went in. And then when she was injecting me again, I thought, oh my God, it just felt like it was low, like she was going overboard with it. It was a couple of days later. I saw my face was just getting weaker and weaker, especially on one side. My face it was a mess.
Marie says for a few weeks it looked as though she'd suffered a stroke. Not long after, she discovered the injector had no medical qualifications despite having posed as a nurse. But in the UK, there aren't any laws restricting who can perform treatments like Botox and filler.
Once Botox is injected into the skin, you can't take it out. So if that's injected incorrectly, there's a huge risk that problems could arise, and those problems can last for a number of weeks. They can last up to 12 weeks. If dermal fillers are injected into a blood vessel, they can also lead to complications such as visual disturbances and blindness. That can be irreversible.
Fiona Ross is a qualified nurse. She owns an aesthetics clinic in Glasgow where she offers injectable cosmetic treatments.
Hi Val, how are you? You okay?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. Come on. We know the protocols to follow. Someone who doesn't have a medical background maybe wouldn't spot a complication quite so early on and have the tools to treat it effectively.
Only people with prescriptions from a medical professional can buy legitimate Botox.
Have a little look and then talk me through any concerns you've got. So any lines, wrinkles, any bits that you want.
Yes, here. See it here? Yeah.
What we have seen on the market is some very cheap anti-wrinkle injections, dermal fillers being offered. In your opinion, are they of the quality that you would expect to be injected?
No. In the UK, we're seeing a huge amount of cheap product come to market. They're not science-backed. There's not a huge amount of research behind them to show that they are safe and that they're appropriate for treatment. And with that, because of their lower price point, they often fall into non-medic hands, which can lead to a whole host of other problems.
Fiona is a member of Save Face, a UK-wide register of medical aesthetic practitioners, which campaigns for tougher industry regulations. The number of complaints the group has received about unregistered injectors has gone up. In 2021, it looked into 233 reports in Scotland. In 2022, that increased to 292.
They're not seeing the harm that then comes to people because, as you said, people are scared to feel foolish, to freak out.
Yeah.
So it's a
Now,
bit like
doctors,
that.
nurses and dentists who offer aesthetic treatments have formed a group in an attempt to bring about change.
The UK is alone in Europe. It's actually alone in the whole of both North and South America. It's been the only country in which people who have no medical background can inject with just the permission of the recipient.
Since 2016, medical professionals who want to offer cosmetic injections in Scotland have had to pay to join an official register. But there's no requirement for non-medics to do the same.
Regulated clinics all have a prescriber present, which means that should a complication occur, then there would be somebody there that could write a prescription that could help it. Whereas in these other clinics that have got non-medical clinics, there is no prescriber present, which means that the only place for the person to go is the NHS.
The group wants to see a minimum standard of training for people offering injections.
In practice, you would actually be better giving up your registration. It would be easier to perform these procedures.
Absolutely. We could do virtually anything without anyone breathing down our neck. And yeah, change needs to happen. For public safety alone, it needs to happen.
In a Scottish Government consultation 4 years ago, 98% of people said they'd be in favour of further regulation. But nothing has changed.
I read recently that 48% of young people think of dermal fillers and Botox the same as going for a haircut, and it's just not. It's so different. It's not just a beauty treatment. It is so much more than that, and it can have such lasting effects.
In England, a law was introduced 3 years ago that made it illegal for under 18s to receive Botox and fillers. No such law exists here.
It has to be better regulated before something awful happens. And I think with these young girls, they're changing things about their appearance at such a young age, and you think, where does that end and where does that evolve?
The recovery period after COVID, there's been an unwillingness to engage in any form of useful dialogue. But we'll be writing to the Scottish Government to try and force dialogue forward.
Do you feel confident that you will be listened to?
I don't really know how to answer that, because we have waited so long. Proposals were brought in place back way before 2014. Probably 2011 was the first kind of talk of any kind of legislation coming into place. So I am positive from the point of view that we will drive that change forward. Will the government listen? I hope they listen.
Even if new laws are brought in, it won't change what happened to Marie. The woman who injected her wasn't punished, but Marie believes she did leave Glasgow.
She just blocked me. It was horrible. I looked horrible. And I was embarrassed as well, because I just never thought I would get scammed. I don't know. I always thought, I'm like, when people go to places like that, you're like, that's what they get for trying to get a bargain.
Now Marie runs her own beauty salon, but there are no syringes in sight.
I've never been tempted to do injectables at all. I'm not interested in anything that can come with major side effects. I don't like the thought of being in control of toxins getting into people's bodies. I do get the treatments, but I definitely wouldn't offer them.
Going by your experience, how has that changed how you approach your own treatments that you get?
I would never ever go on Facebook or Google or anything now and go anywhere that's not an actual medical establishment, like a dentist or a doctor's office.
Marie says unless something changes within the industry, the problem will only continue to grow.
I'm on a lot of Facebook group pages with a lot of beauticians who do injectables, and I'm like, oh my God. I'll look at it and they'll put a picture in of something that's happened, and they'll be like, what should I do? On a Facebook group. And I'm thinking, if you don't know, just tell them to phone a doctor, tell them to go to the chemist. But they're asking a Facebook group full of other people that don't know. Whereas if the training included all of this, and if it was governed in any way, there could be a phone number that you phone.
Do you find that as it becomes more common for people to get aesthetic treatments through people who aren't qualified, it brings a stigma to the industry?
Yes, and I think that's a really scary thing. You're paying for the experience, you're paying for that aftercare should you ever need it. And I think that's something that people need to be aware of and really consider when they're making a decision about who their injector is.